Imagine being at your own funeral. Family members crying, inconsolable friends, everyone believing you're dead. Now, imagine walking in through the door and seeing their faces transform into pure shock. Sounds like a movie script, doesn't it? But this story is unbelievable yet real. A woman was declared dead but reappeared at her own wake, and the truth behind it is even more disturbing than you can imagine. What happened to Noela Rukundo was not a case of mistaken identity or something supernatural. It was a shocking conspiracy, an indescribable betrayal, and a cruel plan that was supposed to have killed her. But fate had other plans. This case exposes the mysteries of the real world, the inexplicable events that make us question how far a human being can go. And more than that, it reveals something terrifying: the greatest danger isn't always lurking in the shadows, sometimes, it sleeps right next to you. If you think you've heard absurd stories of betrayal, revenge, and surprising twists, wait until you hear this one. Because this shocking true story will change the way you see relationships and trust. But before we judge, we need to understand everything that happened. But what seemed like a normal life was about to turn into an unthinkable nightmare. Noela had everything for what could have been a fairy tale love story. Newly married, living in Australia, she believed she had found a partner for life. Her husband appeared caring, protective, and charming, at least at first. As in many abusive relationships, the warning signs of danger emerged subtly: jealousy disguised as concern, small comments that undermined her self-confidence, and a constant need for control. Noela, like so many others trapped in this cycle, didn't realize her reality was about to become a shocking real-life story worthy of a horror movie. As time passed, the husband's small actions intensified. Moments of affection began to give way to increasingly absurd demands. He manipulated, played psychological games, and isolated Noela from the world, creating a reality where only he was right. Outsiders would never have imagined what went on behind closed doors. This happens more often than people think. According to experts, many victims don't even realize they're trapped in an abusive relationship until it's too late. And that's exactly what happened to Noela. She only understood the danger when she found herself caught up in an inexplicable and terrifying mystery. The turning point came when Noela received news that her stepmother had passed away. A hard blow, no doubt, but she couldn't have imagined that this trip would be the beginning of an inexplicable event. Her husband, showing support, encouraged her to go to Africa for the funeral. He seemed concerned, affectionate, everything was back to how it used to be. But this attitude hid something much darker: a calculated plan, meticulously designed, which would make Noela the protagonist of one of the most surprising twists anyone could imagine. Every second on the plane was torture. But she wasn't running away anymore. She was coming back, to face her own killer. Noela's trip to Africa seemed like just another sad family obligation, but what awaited her was far worse than grief. She arrived in her home country, met with relatives, and began preparations for the funeral. Her husband, always keen to keep up appearances, stayed in touch from afar, asking how she was doing, displaying false affection. But behind the scenes, he had already orchestrated a cruel plan. What Noela didn't know was that while she mourned her stepmother's death, a trap was being set. A plan where she wouldn't have a way out, at least, that's what her husband believed. Then the unthinkable happened. Noela was in a car, returning from an errand, when the vehicle was intercepted by a group of armed men. Everything happened too fast. They yanked her out of the passenger seat, blindfolded her, and took her to an unknown location. Fear took over. There was no explanation for this. An inexplicable event, a shocking true story, a terror that seemed endless. For hours, she heard the kidnappers arguing in a dialect she partially understood. And it was at that moment that the truth came out, a revelation that froze her blood. Amidst the confused and aggressive voices, Noela heard something that made her heart race. They were talking about her. But it wasn't a ransom demand, it wasn't a robbery. It was something much worse. Her own husband had hired these men. The objective? Her execution. Yes, the man she shared her life with had ordered her death. Noela was now struggling not only to understand the mystery of the real world she was trapped in, but to survive. And when it seemed her fate was sealed, a surprising twist changed everything. But nothing, absolutely nothing, could prepare her for what was to come next. The truth that came out of those men's mouths was like a blade cutting through everything she believed to be real. In the dark, hands tied, and heart racing, Noela tried to understand how her life had come to this point. The kidnappers talked among themselves, laughed, and discussed amounts, yes, amounts. Then came the final blow. One of them revealed that her husband had paid them to kill her. A conspiracy worthy of a horror movie, but unbelievable and real. The idea that the man she had shared her life with, the one she trusted, wanted her dead was hard to process. Shock mixed with fear, but something inside Noela began to change. The survival instinct spoke louder. The criminals didn't seem to be in a hurry. In between conversations, one of them let slip even more disturbing details. Noela's husband not only wanted her dead but had already told family and friends that she was dead. Her funeral was about to take place. A fake ceremony, with crocodile tears and hypocritical mourning, while she was still alive, trying to figure out how to escape this macabre trap. But it was at this moment that something unexpected happened. Noela detected hesitation in one of the kidnappers' voices. Something was off script. And this small uncertainty would change everything. Noela realized that not all the kidnappers were fully convinced to follow through with the plan. She picked up on the right detail. At the exact moment, one of them muttered that this didn't feel right. What started as a death sentence turned into a chance, minimal, but real. And Noela knew that if there was any possibility of getting out of this situation alive, she had to act fast. What happened next not only saved her life but created one of the most unbelievable real-world mysteries ever seen. With her heart in pieces and her soul torn apart, she had to make a decision. And what she did next wasn't what anyone expected. The silence of the night was broken by an unexpected whisper. One of the kidnappers approached her, and instead of threatening her, did something completely unexpected. He said he wouldn't kill her. A surprising twist, an inexplicable event. Noela could hardly believe it. The very man hired to assassinate her decided to spare her life. And more than that, he did something that would change everything. In an unlikely act of humanity, the criminals put her in a vehicle and took her to a safe location. But before leaving, one of them said something she would never forget. Your husband wants you dead, but we don't kill women, children, or old people. We just wanted the money. Still dazed, Noela was left in a thicket, alone and confused. Her body trembled, but her mind was already working quickly. She needed to get home, she needed justice. But how could someone who was already presumed dead simply reappear? By now the funeral could have already taken place. It was an unbelievable, yet real, situation. Noela had no other choice. She sought help as quickly as possible. When she finally found a phone, she made the most important call of her life, and it wasn't to her family, but to the police. The way back wasn't easy, but destiny had something even more impressive in store. Noela hadn't just escaped death, she was about to star in one of the most absurd real-world mysteries ever recorded. A few hours later, she was already with the authorities, receiving guidance on the next steps. And that's when an idea began to form in her mind. If her husband was already mourning her death, perhaps it was time to turn this charade into her greatest weapon. And the big surprise was yet to come. And it was at that moment, as she watched the fake tears of those who claimed to love her, that Noela realized, something was terribly wrong. Now imagine, you're crying at your wife's funeral, and she appears before you. Alive. It was as if death itself had changed its mind. The hall was full. Family, Friends, acquaintances, all gathered to mourn Noela's death. Her husband, the great actor of the night, cried profusely, receiving consoling hugs. But deep down, he was celebrating. The plan seemed perfect, an inexplicable mystery about to be buried forever. What he didn't expect was that the real spectacle was yet to happen. Noela, alive and fully aware of what she needed to do, headed to the ceremony location. And when she finally walked in, what happened next was worthy of a movie. The moment her husband's eyes met hers, time seemed to freeze. It was like seeing a ghost. His face went pale, his hands trembled, and for a few seconds, he couldn't even speak. The room, previously filled with the sad murmurs of condolences, fell into a sepulchral silence. The shock in people's gazes was indescribable. The woman who was dead showed up at her own funeral. Someone screamed, a chair fell to the floor, and chaos ensued. But Noela remained firm. She wasn't there just to shock, she was there to seek justice. Without wasting time, the police, who were already aware of the situation, entered right behind her and did what needed to be done. Her husband, still in shock, was handcuffed in front of everyone. The truth came out like a whirlwind, destroying the facade of fake mourning and revealing the grotesque betrayal he had plotted. Noela was no longer just a survivor. She was the biggest nightmare of the man who tried to destroy her. But this story was far from over. What came next showed that the absurdity didn't stop there. But justice does not mean the pain is over. What Noela suffered cannot be undone, but her courage deserves to be remembered. The man who, just minutes earlier, was seen as an inconsolable widower was now handcuffed in front of everyone. What shocked people even more wasn't just the betrayal, the attempted murder, or the funeral theater, but the ridiculous justification he gave when questioned. He simply said he did it because she annoyed him too much. Yes, that was the argument of a man who hired hitmen to get rid of his wife. A real-world mystery that defies any logic. The investigation revealed even more disturbing details. Noela's husband had already paid part of the money to the criminals and planned to start a new life with another woman. Conspiracy, betrayal, and attempted murder, all coldly calculated. But what he didn't foresee was that the greed of the kidnappers would betray him. Instead of following through with the plan, they deceived the mastermind and saved Noela. The tables turned in a way no one expected, and now he had to face the consequences. In court, the man's coldness left everyone stunned. No remorse, no regret, just irritation at being caught. But fate has a cruel irony. The same woman he tried to eliminate was there, alive and strong, ensuring that justice was served. He was sentenced, but the impact of this story was far from over. What followed next showed that surviving something like this can be a bigger challenge than many might imagine. Noela may have survived, but her life would never be the same. The betrayal and attempted murder left not only emotional scars but deep wounds in her trust, routine, and even her safety. She was a survivor, but also a woman who needed to rebuild everything from scratch. The weight of knowing someone who was supposed to protect her tried to kill her was something no one can simply forget. And, as if that weren't enough, the trial brought even more attention to the case, making her story public and sparking debates about abusive relationships and domestic violence. But the scariest part was realizing that, even with her husband in prison, the effects of the conspiracy continued to haunt her. Recordings of the case leaked, crime details were exploited in the media, and to make matters worse, some people still questioned her version of events. This is something that happens to many victims of violence. Instead of receiving unconditional support, they are often disbelieved or even blamed. Noela had to face suspicious looks, invasive questions, and, above all, the challenge of moving forward while the world kept talking about her unbelievable, yet real, story. However, instead of hiding, Noela decided to use this experience to warn other women. She became a symbol of vengeance and justice, not in the sense of retaliating pain, but of ensuring that no one else would have to go through something similar. Her story served to expose the dangers of abusive relationships and the need to recognize the signs before it's too late. But the big question is, how do you identify these signs? How do you prevent something like this from happening? The next point answers exactly that. Many people believe that an abusive relationship starts with physical aggression, but the truth is that the first signs are often much more subtle. Excessive jealousy disguised as concern, control over what you wear, who you talk to, and where you go, it all starts small, almost imperceptibly. The abuser doesn't reveal himself all at once, he builds a cycle of manipulation that traps the victim without them realizing it. And when the realization hits, it often seems impossible to leave. Noela's shocking true story proves that ignoring the signs can cost dearly, sometimes, even your life. Another important warning sign is isolation. If the person you're dating constantly criticizes your friends and family, tries to distance you from any external support, and makes you feel guilty for maintaining other relationships, it's a major red flag. Supernatural cases may seem distant, but the mind of an abuser is a true inexplicable mystery, capable of transforming love into fear and security into threat. Relationships like these don't improve with promises or over time. They worsen. The best way to protect yourself is to recognize and acknowledge these patterns as early as possible. Recording conversations, accounts from close people, and even keeping a diary can help you see what's happening before it's too late. If something doesn't feel right, trust your instincts. No one needs to wait for a surprising twist or an inexplicable event to realize they're in danger. Information is your best ally. But if that's the case, why do so many victims fail to recognize the risks? This leads us to a common mistake that needs to be uncovered. One of the biggest mistakes is believing that she wasn't like that before. Many victims of abusive relationships cling to the idea that the person who was once loving and attentive is still there, hidden behind aggressive behaviors. This creates a dangerous cycle of denial and hope, where every apology feels like a fresh start and every bad phase is justified as just a difficult moment. But the truth is that this change isn't temporary, it's an escalation. Abuse rarely starts with a slap. It begins with words, then threats, until one day the line between argument and aggression disappears. Another fatal error is underestimating signs of control. Phrases like, "I do this because I love you, no one else cares about you like I do," or, "You don't need anyone else but me," may sound romantic at first, but they are clear indicators of manipulation. The abuser undermines the victim's self-confidence, makes them feel guilty for their emotions, and often convinces them that any attempt to leave the relationship will result in something worse. This explains why so many people, even when facing violence, can't simply walk away. Finally, one of the most common mistakes is not seeking help out of fear of judgment. Many victims avoid sharing what they're going through because they think no one will believe them, or worse, that they'll be blamed. And unfortunately, society often reinforces this fear. Noela's case proved that even an extreme event like a murder plot can be minimized by some people. But ignoring a problem doesn't make it disappear. Recognizing the danger before it reaches irreversible proportions is the only way to prevent tragedies. And now, knowing all this, the question is, what are you going to do with this information? Noela Rukundo's story doesn't end with a body. It ends with a woman standing, defying death, deceit, and destiny itself. Stories like Noela's make us question how far human malice can go. Who could have imagined that the person you share your life with would be capable of planning your death? It's a scary but necessary reminder, danger often comes from where we least expect it. But now that you know the signs of an abusive relationship and the mistakes that cause so many victims to ignore the danger, the question remains, would you be able to recognize these signs in your own life or in the life of someone close to you? If this shocking story made you see things differently, share this knowledge. Many people live through similar situations without realizing it. Perhaps someone close to you needs this information to break free from a dangerous cycle before it's too late. And if you've been through something like this, or know someone who has, leave a comment. Your experience could help others see the truth before they become another statistic. And if you want to continue learning about the mysteries of the real world, inexplicable events, and unbelievable yet true stories, subscribe to the channel and activate notifications. Here, each story brings valuable lessons, and you won't want to miss the next episode. See you in the next video.